Now, as we come to the main event, main thing now, I give the floor to Reverend Dr. Francis to address us. Reverend, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon to one and all.
A little bit closer to you.
Thank you.
Deep down.
All the protocols observed, you are most welcome to this session. I thank Reverend Father Taiju, Rector, for having given me this chance and also relating me to heaven. I was in heaven when he was narrating the whole adventures I have done. So thank you for the inspiring verse. You are free to sleep, but please see that don't snore. Hold up. I cannot deny you cannot sleep and all. So with this verse I begin, and I wish and pray for what all things I wanted to say. Taiju has already mentioned about the Council of Nicaea, so you got a very good introduction. Thank you so much for the well introduced topic. So you can take this paper, and last page of the paper, there is a memory verse where we can easily remember all the councils. Last part. Nico, F, Kalkoko, Nico, la 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 la, li 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 li, vi, koba, la, tree, what, 21 councils. But unfortunately, we missed 1 year, that is, after 1414 to 1418, you can add 1 more year, and our Lucas, Nicean has beautifully presented all the 21 councils. We can put 1431 to 1445, that is the Council of Basel, Ferrara, Florence, that is missing there. So 1431 to 1445. So this is, I know that you may not be focusing always only on the Council of Nicaea, but it is good to remember that the first 1,000 years of the church was a synodal church. Very much of synodality was there. A conciliar church, we should say. We have frequent councils. And also please remember that we have the first 8 councils, Nico, F, Kalkoko, Nico, all were held in the eastern part of the empire, not in the west. And all these councils were convened by emperors, of course with the consent of the Pope, convened by the emperors. And again, to empower our women sitting here, 2 of the councils were convened by women. Council of Chalcedon, Pulcheria. Council of Nicaea the second, Irene, because they were the rulers those days. So the first 8 councils are called imperial councils or the eastern councils. Then we move to western part. The next 10 councils are called papal councils or the medieval councils. Then we have the last 3, they are called the modern councils. I request you to remember the names of year of the 4 councils, of the first 4 councils at least, and the last 3 councils. Because the 4 councils are, Pope Gregory the Great compared the 4 councils to 4 gospels. Because of the Christological, Trinitarian, soteriological importance of the development of the dogma through these councils. So they are compared to 4 gospels. So you can remember the first 4 and the last 3 at least. I don't say that you remember all the councils. At least you remember the first 4 councils and the last 3 councils. The Trent, which is a response to the Protestant Reformation or Counter-Reformation we call it, or we have the First Vatican Council defined the infallibility, and again we have the Second Vatican Council, as already mentioned, the new ecclesiology, evolving a new ecclesiology. So this is the introduction I just want to tell you. And also Council of Nicaea is very important because the key players were from Africa. Very often when we think about African church, we say that the church is having a history of 100 years or 200 years. No. It is having a history of 2000 years. Before Rome was developing a Latin tradition, strong Latin tradition, the North Africa developed. Or we have Alexandria in Egypt developed. We had a strong school called Alexandrian school. So we have to take pride in being an African because the African church is having a strong root and contributed. That is why deliberately I mentioned in my presentation the participation of the African church in the Council of Nicaea. So this is the introduction, just to have an introduction. Now we go to the little more about the introduction. Just want to say that who was the first one to use the term council? Again, one from Africa, Tertullian. Tertullian, of course, went away from the Catholic Church because of his rigorosity. He went away from the Catholic Church. Otherwise, he was the one who contributed, who laid the foundation for the Latin theology. Of course, Augustine developed later on the foundation of that. So we can say that why it is called ecumenical council. It is the word coming from oikumene, that is the inhabited world. The whole inhabited world has to be present in the council. All the representatives from the inhabited world. That is why it is called ecumenical. And again, we can see that Cyprian of Carthage made use of the councils, synods, not the ecumenical councils, synods, to assert the primacy of the African church. Cyprian had fight even with Rome for certain questions. But still he reconciled with Rome and he continued a friendly relationship with Rome. The structure of the councils followed the model of the Roman Senate. The consultative character of the church is shown through the councils, beginning from the Jerusalem Council. That is beyond all councils. The Jerusalem Council is beyond all councils. Then the theological disputes. Next slide. Theological disputes we have. You know that the Christianity encountered three worlds, three ambiences Christianity was having. First is the Jewish-Palestinian background. Second one is the Roman background. And the third one is the Greek or Hellenistic background. Then the problem is very easy for Christian religion to follow monotheism because we have the tradition from Jewish religion. Then the problem comes the Son. How to accommodate the Son? The problem started there. So we have the theological disputes. We have a number of disputes. And some of the theologians like Irenaeus and other people gave solution to this. But they could not develop a proper theology comprising all the three, the Trinity, Father, Son and the Holy Spirit. And thus we had disputes and controversies. The Trinitarian disputes having many names, we can see that economic Trinity, all this, or monarchianism, subordinationism, all these things were, disputes were there, basing on the teachings of the explaining the Trinity to the ordinary people. And not compromising monotheism. That was one of their preoccupations. In that preoccupation, some people went wrong. Even Origen, to some extent, subordinated Jesus. Then Justin, for example, he developed the theology of Logos. Again, he had the problem to understand the proper understanding of the theology of the Trinity. So this is the theological dispute. This is a little bit complicated, not a good topic for the afternoon sessions and all. So I don't go into all the details of all those things. But one thing you have to remember again here, Tertullian was the one who developed Trinitas. Tertullian was the one who used for the first time Trinitas. Today we use it very comfortably, Trinity, coming from Trinitas used by Tertullian. So please remember Tertullian. Then also we have Athenagoras, he used the term trias. From there we have the beginnings of the Trinity, etc., etc. Already I have mentioned about Justin, etc., etc. Then we have the influence of Greek philosophy. It is said that Christian religion was hijacked by Hellenism. So we have the influence of Greek philosophy. We have schools, for example, Alexandrian school, very famous school. The largest library once upon a time was in Alexandria. Where is Alexandria? Egypt. Where is Egypt? Egypt is in Africa. So the largest library, the collection, the rarest collection of manuscripts were in Alexandria. Even it is said that Panthenus, you might have heard of Panthenus, he visited India, then he took away from India the Gospel of Matthew written in the Aramaic to the Alexandrian library. So we have a strong foundation here. Then again Antioch. Now we come to Antioch, then we have Arianism. Arius had his training in Antioch, although he had his origin in northern part of Africa. He was very much influenced by some theologians there, Arius. So then he came to Alexandria. So the beginning of the context for the Nicean Council is Arianism. So now we speak about Arianism. Arius was a priest in Alexandria, known for his ascetical life with a great following. He had a great follower. He had a number of followers. Around the year 318, he defended an extreme subordinational or subordinationism Christology in his sermons and writings. He asserted that the Logos was not the true God and that it had an entirely different nature, neither eternal nor omnipotent. See, question the divinity of Logos. That is the beginning of Arianism. But created in time, imperfect, and able to suffer. Because the Logos was the first or the highest created being and far superior to human beings, he could regard it as a half-god, demure. You might have heard of demure. It is called demure. But it was not in itself divine. So he questioned the divinity of Christ. There begins. Jesus is quasi-divine, quasi-human. And today also, as our rector has mentioned, this problem we have.